chapter, that is climate change and environment, preparing to face the future. Now, greenhouse gas emissions are the most significant threat to humanity and the inescapable reality the world faces. Much of the global angst associated with climate change is about the emissions of greenhouse gases and carbon in particular. The more greenhouse gases are emitted, the more they stay trapped in the atmosphere, accelerating global warming. Hence, the argument goes that if some of the cataclysmic consequences are to be avoided, then global warming must be arrested, slowed, and if possible, reversed. Further, the share of developing countries in the stock of greenhouse gases, usually measured as carbon dioxide equivalent, has been minimal compared to the developed countries. Talking of India, its nationally determined contributions has been advanced to the target of 50% of the installed electric capacity from non-fossil fuels by 2030. To meet finance for climate action goals, framework has been issued in compliance with International Capital Market Association green bond principles. So this was in 2021. Progress on India's climate action. In 2008, India launched the National Action Plan on Climate Change, that is NAPCC, establishing 8 national missions. National Adaptation Fund for Climate Change, NAFCC 2015-16, to support adaptation activities in states and union territories. The share of non-fossil sources in total installed electricity capacity has reached 40.4%. Share of installed electricity capacity in solar and wind energy reached 25.1% in 22-23 from 8.9% in 2014-15. India's updated NDC, that is nationally determined contributions, life, that is lifestyle for environment, as a key to combating climate change and to adopt a climate friendly and cleaner path for economic development. To reduce emissions intensity of its GDP by 45% by 2030 from 2005 level. These are the NDCs that we have updated this year. To achieve about 50% of cumulative electric power installed capacity from non-fossil fuel based energy source by 2030, transfer of technology and low cost international finances, including Green Climate Fund. To create an additional carbon sink of 2.5 to 3 billion tons of CO2 equivalent through additional forest and tree cover by 2030. This remains the same as our previous NDC. To better adapt to climate change by enhancing investment and development programs in sectors vulnerable to climate change. To mobilize domestic and new additional funds from developed countries. To build capacities and create a domestic framework and international architecture for quick diffusion of cutting-edge climate technologies in India and joint collaborative R&D. So, progress on 8 national missions of NAPCC's National Solar Mission, solar power capacity of 61.62 gigawatts installed by October 2022. National Mission for Enhanced Energy Efficiency, PAT Cycle 7 notified in October 2021 for energy saving target of 6.63 million tons of oil equivalent. National Mission on Sustainable Health. National Mission on Sustainable Health, 721 kilometers of metro rail network made operational by August 2022. 62.79 lakh individual households toilet and 6.21 lakh community and public toilet constructed by April 2022. National Mission for a Green India, 626.96 crore for afforestation targets over an area of 2.1 lakh hectares. National Water Mission, that is Jal Shakti Abhiyan, Catch the Rain 2022. National Mission on Strategic Knowledge for Climate Change created and strengthened 12 centers of excellence for climate change, that is in June 2021. Now, National Mission for Sustainable Himalayan Ecosystem, Inter-University Consortium, 8 major R&D programs initiated, and then National Mission for Sustainable Agriculture, key targets for FY 22-23 covering 0.15 lakh hectares under organic farming and 10 lakh hectares under micro irrigation. Moving on, status of forest and tree cover. One of the 3 quantifiable targets for India's NDC is to achieve additional carbon sink of 2.5 billion to 3 billion tons by 2030. The forest and tree cover in India has shown a gradual and steady trend of increase in the last 1.5 decades. India ranks third globally with respect to net gains in average annual forest area between 2010 and 2020 due to robust policy initiatives. Important schemes like Green India Mission, Compensatory Afforestation Management Fund and Planning Authority (CAMPA), National Afforestation Program (NAP), and Green Highway Policy of 2015, Policy for Enhancement of Urban Greens, National Agroforestry Policy, and Submissions on Agroforestry. Now, carbon stock in India's forest and tree covers. Indian States of Forest Report estimates that the carbon stock of forest to be about 7,204 million tons in 2019. Arunachal Pradesh has the maximum carbon stock, followed by Madhya Pradesh. Per hectare, forest carbon stock is highest in Jammu Kashmir, followed by Himachal Pradesh, followed by Sikkim, and then Andaman and Nicobar. Preservation of ecosystems, a critical adaptation action. Now, ecosystem plays an important role in carbon storage, protects the coastal areas, and enhance water quality besides other services such as cultural, spiritual, and tourist attractions. Wetlands, the floods in Kashmir Valley and Chennai of 2015 are reminders of the ways wetland destruction can make lives vulnerable. Mangrove and coastal wetlands from the first line of defense form the first line of defense for coastal communities against increased storm surges, flooding, and hurricanes. Certain mangrove species like Chilka and Sundarbans along the east coast and Dwarka and Porbandar along the west coast of India are likely to reduce and shift landwards by 2070 due to a decline in suitable habitat in response to precipitation and sea level changes. Now, the National Coastal Mission Program on Conservation and Management of Mangroves and Coral Reefs is being implemented. Moving on to rivers conservation and rejuvenation, government is working on mapping and converging the 5 Ps, that is people, policy, plan, program, and project. Scheme is a central sector scheme of Namami Gange for River Ganga and its tributaries, and the centrally sponsored scheme of National River Conservation Plan for other rivers. Now, government has recently released detailed project report for rejuvenation of 13 major rivers. Works proposed include afforestations on river banks leading to increased green cover, measure to contain soil erosion, recharge the groundwater table, sequester carbon dioxide, catchment area treatment, ecological restoration, moisture conservation, livelihood improvement, and income generation, etc. Now, the approach to transition to renewable energy sources, according to Central Electricity Authority, the likely installed capacity by the end of 2029-30 is expected to be 800 gigawatts, of which non-fossil fuels would be more than 500 gigawatts. The Renewable 2020 Global Status Report during the 2014 to 2021 period, total investment in renewables stood at $78.1 billion in India. Now, green hydrogen, a critical source of alternate energy. Green hydrogen is also an important element of India's long-term low emissions development strategy, that is LT leads. Now, National Green Hydrogen Mission, it will facilitate demand creation, production, utilization and export of green hydrogen and mobilization of over 8 lakh crore rupees of investment by 2030. Now, projected optimal mix of installed capacity for 2029-30 will be a small share for hydrogen, green hydrogen. Small hydro power plants would form 0.61%. Wind will is expected to be around 17.13% of the mix. Solar is expected to be around 34.28% of the mix. And coal is supposed to reduce to the level of 32.66%. So we are basically counting on solar, wind and coal. And rest of them, hydrogen is supposed to find 7.46% in the mix. Moving on, LT leads, that is long term, low emissions development strategy. It will focus on rational utilization of natural resources with due regards to energy security. Encompasses the objectives of national hydrogen policy, Increased use of biofuels, especially ethanol blending in petrol, ethanol blending to reach 20% by the ethanol supply year of in the by ethanol supply in the year of 2025-26. Development will be driven by smart city initiative, integrated planning of cities for mainstreaming adaptation and enhancing energy and resource efficiency, effective green building codes, and innovative solid and liquid waste management. Now, moving on to green bonds, finance for sustainable development. Now, IMF data indicates that green bonds of value around $620 billion were issued across the world in the year 2021. In the Union Budget of 2022-23 announced the issue of sovereign green bonds. The security-wise allocation would include 5 years and 10 years sovereign green bonds for 4,000 crore rupees each for both auctions. Now, sovereign green bonds to be given the status of fully accessible route for investment in government securities by non-residents. Regulatory framework for issuance of green debt securities. Now, SEBI has allowed an issuer under the SEBI ILMDS regulations, that is, issue and listing of municipal debt securities, to issue a green debt security if it falls within the definition of green debt security. Now, SEBI to enhance the scope of definition of green debt security by including new modes of sustainable finance. It is to introduce the concept of blue bonds, that is related to water management and marine sector, yellow bond, which will be related to solar, and transition bonds as subcategories of green debt securities. Now, SEBI has issued new sustainable reporting requirement under the Business Responsibility and Sustainability Report. Major decisions at COP27. India continued its focus on the theme of life, that is lifestyle for environment, launched in COP26. Sharm el Sheikh implementation plan, transition to sustainable lifestyle and sustainable pattern of consumption and production for efforts to address climate change. Just Transition and Mitigation Work Program, joint work on the implementation of climate action on agriculture and food security to be conducted over 4 years. To establish new funding arrangements for assisting developing countries in responding to loss and damage. Importance of science in guiding climate action, doubling adaptation finance, dialogue on making finance flows consistent with low emissions, and climate resilient development calls on multilateral development banks. Reforms for delivering climate finance at scale, diversity of sources of finance. Now, India's initiative at international stage, International Solar Alliance to unlock $1 trillion worth of investment in solar by 2030 while reducing the cost of technology and its financing. ISA is partnering with multilateral development banks, development finance institutions, private and public sector organizations to deploy cost effective and transitional solutions through solar energy, especially in the least developed countries and small island developing states, that is SIDS. Now, ISA has expanded its coverage to all its 110 member countries and is assisting in setting up solar energy demonstration projects. CDRI, that is Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, was launched by the Honorable Prime Minister of India during the UN Climate Action Summit on 23 September 2019 in New York. It aims to promote resilience of infrastructure system to climate and disaster risks, thereby ensuring sustainable development. Till now, 31 countries, 6 international organizations, and 2 private sector organizations have joined as members of CDRI. Leadership Group for Industry Transition, that is LEAD IT, was launched by the government of Sweden and India to together achieve the Paris Agreement with like-minded countries. Now, during COP27, LEAD IT members adopted a joint statement to promote value chain partnership and material circularity, to invest and cooperate on the planning and implementation of infrastructure, to support energy and industry transition, to de-risk investments in the transition of heavy industries in emerging and developing countries, regulatory framework, incentives, and long-term plan, that is COP 15/2022 of Convention on Biological Diversity. Effective conservation and management of at least 30% of the world's land, inland waters, coastal areas, and ocean to facilitate transition finance and attract private investment. Initiatives related to other environmental issues reduce to near zero loss of areas of high biodiversity importance, cut global food waste in half, and significantly reduce overconsumption and waste generation. Reduced by half both excess nutrients and overall risk posed by pesticides and highly hazardous chemicals. Progressively phasing out or reforming subsidies that harm biodiversity by 2030. Mobilize over $200 billion per year by 2030 in domestic and international biodiversity related funding from all sources, that is, public and private. Raise international financial flows from developed to developing countries. Now, Project Cheetah. Under the scheme, 8 Namibian wild cheetahs were introduced in September 2022 in Kuno National Park in Madhya Pradesh. Rationale was cheetahs can help restore open forest and grassland ecosystems in India. This will help conserve biodiversity and enhance the ecosystem services like water security, carbon sequestration, and soil moisture conservation, benefiting society. The government has constituted a 2 year task force for monitoring cheetah introduction. Review the functions of the cheetah task force would be to review progress and monitor the health status of cheetah, upkeep of its quarantine and soft release enclosures, protection status of the entire area. It will also monitor the hunting skills and adaptations of cheetahs to the habitat of Kuno National Park. It will monitor the release of cheetahs from quarantine, bombas to soft release enclosures, grasslands, and open forest areas. Open cheetah habitat for ecotourism and suggest regulations in this regard. Suggest and advise on developing tourism infrastructure in fringe areas of Kuno National Park and protected areas. Wildlife, its preservation and protection. Now, tiger conservation. India is home to 53 tiger reserves in 18 states with about 75% of the wild tiger population at global level. India achieved the global goal of doubling tigers in 2018, 4 years before the targeted year 2022. In addition, 17 tiger reserves in the country have CATS International accreditation and 2 have received International TX2 Award 2015. Conservation in numbers. Now, Asiatic lions have shown a steady increase with a population of 672 individuals as of 2020. India now has 12,852 leopards. More than 60% of the population of Asiatic elephants is in India. Wildlife Protection Amendment Act of 2022 empowers the government to regulate and prohibit the import, trade, possession, or proliferation of invasive alien species. The Act aims to rationalize the schedules by reducing the number of schedules for specially protected animals to two, removing the schedule for vermin species and inserting a new schedule for specimens listed in the appendix under CITES, that is, scheduled specimens. Now, the plastic waste management and elimination of identified single use plastics. On July 1st, 2022, a ban was imposed on the manufacture, import, stocking, distribution, sale, and use of identified single use plastic items which have low utility and high littering potential all across the country. It will promote a circular economy, help move towards a sustainable plastic packaging by reducing the plastic footprint and promoting new alternatives to plastic packaging. Guidelines on extended producer responsibility on plastic packaging. Mandatory registration of producers, importers, and brand owners, plastic waste producer processors through a centralized online portal. Coverage of 4 categories of plastic packaging, that is rigid, flexible, multi-layered plastic packaging, and compostable plastic packaging. Clearly defined targets for EPR, mandatory targets for reuse of rigid plastic packaging, minimum level of cycling of plastic waste, and the use of recycled plastic content in plastic packaging. Other centralized online portals for EPR implementation, sale and purchase of surplus EPR certificates, levy of international compensation for non-fulfillment of EPR obligations, provision for verification, audit, and monitoring of obligated entities. Plastic Waste Management Second Amendment Rules of 2022 provides a statutory framework for biodegradable plastics, after conforming to BIS standards and Central Pollution Control Board certification. Rules mandate that environmental compensation should be levied based upon the polluter pays principle. Other national level task force have been formed by ministry. All states and union territories have constituted a special task force for eliminating single-use plastic and effectively implementing plastic waste rules management rules of 2016. Moving on to battery waste management. Battery waste management rules of 2022 to ensure environmentally sound management of waste batteries. Extended producer responsibilities mandate for producers that all waste batteries be collected and sent for recycling refurbishment, prohibiting disposal in landfills and incineration. E-waste management rules of 2022 applicable to every manufacturer, producer, refurbisher, dismantler and recycler who must register with CPCB, that is Central Pollution Control Board. The authorization has now been replaced by registration through an online portal. Schedule 1 has been expanded, and now 106 electrical and electronic equipments have been included in the EPR regime. Management of solar PV modules, panels, cells are added. E-recycle quantities will be computed based on end products to avoid false claims. Provision for generation and transaction of EPR certificates, and provision for environmental compensation and verification and audit. That'll be it for this chapter.